supporting the Zoop comic book family. So you think you're my third one. So this is fantastic. We'll be getting into your new Zoop campaign for your new comic book. But before we get to that, here at Bionic Buzz, we're all about people's passions. I want to know where your passion to be a writer, storyteller kind of came from. Was a certain comic book or movie inspired it, or something that was just naturally for you as a child?
Wow. I mean, I can't remember a time I wasn't. I think with comics, what I think when I finally realized that there were actually scripts that were behind these really cool stories and art that I saw was when Kurt Busiek and George Perez had a run on the Avengers in the late '90s, and they put out a rough cut of one of the issues that was Marvel had put out, and it was just mind blowing to me to see that there was the actual script and how it corresponded to the pencils and how that all evolved into the comic that I enjoyed so much. And really from there, it just opened up a whole world of possibilities to me that a new way of writing that I hadn't even considered up until that point. So, and never looked back.
Very cool. So let's get into your comic book. How do you pronounce the guy's last name? I feel like I'm gonna screw it up.
Xenon.
Xenon. Okay, I remember Xenon. I loved how it like went through different ages in his life. So, which instead of just focusing on one part of it, I guess tell us about the character and the backstory of it.
Well, the premise is Andy Xenon was a kid adventurer, and he was having adventures all over the globe until when he turned 18, his powers just suddenly vanished, and he doesn't have any answers. And in lieu of understanding a situation, he just has to get used to being a normal guy. And people start to forget who Andy Xenon was, and he just is working a job at a department store. And sometimes people recognize him, sometimes he wants them to recognize him, and eventually he just gives up. And the start of the story is when a journalist actually tracks him down for an interview just about his old life and his career, and he reflects on lessons that he's learned and mistakes that he's made, and hopefully there's a second chance around the corner.
Yeah, it's very good. It's kind of an interesting world you set into him too. Like these different like creatures that I mean, like the very beginning when he's like chasing the ones, like you shouldn't be smoking cigarettes and huff puff.
Right.
So, I guess talk about like I guess like the backstory of the actual world he lives in.
Well, it's I kind of call them like kitchen sink fantasies because it's everything in the kitchen sink. So we wanted to give the
like
impression. That. Well, yeah, it's like, I mean, you may have other franchises like Conan where you're not expecting to see, I don't know, cyborgs in a Conan story, or you're not expecting to see dragons or like, medieval dragons in an Alien story, like, like Aliens or Alien 3 or what have you. But then you have these shared hero universes where it's like everything is available, right? You have aliens and you have extra dimensional creatures and you have time travelers and robots and so on. And what I really wanted to do with this was give the impression that of just kind of leaping in at the deep end of a really rich world like that. But we also wanted to make sure that no one felt like they missed their homework, so to speak. That it was something that you felt like you were getting in on a character that had maybe had 500 issues or adventures behind it, but it really is just this one. It's the feel more than the specifics, I guess I should say. So that was something that I think that's the other thing too that I was really I was inspired to do the story because I've been working on animated series like Ben 10 and hero blockbusters like Max Steel, and Nikos, my artist, he worked on Stretch Armstrong in a reboot as well. And what I kind of took stock of was those were characters that weren't really iconic to me taking them on. I think they were really awesome characters, but I met a generation of young adults who had grown up with them and they were iconic to them. Like they might have been 10 when Ben 10 started 15 odd years ago, and now they're, they're 20 somethings. And I was really struck by how I think it's kind of like a lineage of superheroes that I don't think that had gotten a lot of press, because if you think about it, right, I mean, you got Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, all that sort of stuff. And there's this generation of superheroes that I would say are comparable, but they're different in specific ways. Ben doesn't have a secret identity. Max is not wearing tights. He's wearing a more kind of practical outfit with more texture to it. Some of the outfits are maybe more understated. There's just like a kind of a general approach that's not necessarily like the Justice League or Spider-Man and the Avengers or what have you. That I wanted to capture like that specific generation. because a lot of the stories that had inspired me in comics, like pretty soon after I read Buzik's Adventures, I was reading Astro City, and that was a lot of grown-up takes on Silver Age and Golden Age characters. It was asking questions of like, well, what happens if a Spider-Man type character decides he wants to start a family and wants to retire, but he still wants to fight crime in some way? And there was a Jack in the Box story of that. And I don't know if you're familiar with Astro City, but there was a lot of those types of characters. Like, this is a sort of story that you can't tell with Superman. Or this is a story that you can't tell with Batman, but we can tell in a character sort of like that. And it gets into more kind of challenging or interesting areas. I mean, again, even Watchmen, I think, is probably the most successful example of that, because that was supposed to be these DC characters that they'd acquired in a merger, and they were going to do that story. And an editor said, I think this is going to ruin these characters, because you're going to, you're going to turn them into these really kind of reprehensible people with real, like, not just like cute feet of clay, but really deep personality flaws. And hey, why don't we turn them into original characters? So instead of like the Question, we have Rorschach. Instead of the Blue Beetle, we have Night Owl. So it seemed appealing for me to do that, where I think I'd run into a lot of the young adult fans that I talked about too. It was an interesting experience because they'd grown up with these characters and they felt frustrated by the reboots that I'd worked on, because the reboots had kind of reset the clock. So maybe Ben and Max had been aging up into their upper teens alongside the audience, and then they got to a point where the parties that own them had to kind of reassess things and say, like, look, we're making a kid show for kids. It's the further we drift away from that, we're maybe losing what the spirit of these shows are. And they reset them, and I absolutely understand that. But I also understand the perspective of, if you're a fan, that feels a bit frustrating, that you've kind of getting reminded that you've aged out of something that you're so connected with. And that was really what the kernel of the idea was for me, is like, well, what happens if the kid hero ages out? Like, what would that feel like?
I love that. Very dig that. So it's all, the campaign, I think, just launched on Zoop. For those who don't know, Zoop is like kind of crowdfunding for creators of comic books and writers. And the cool thing is they do all the like heavy lifting for you guys.
That's
like,
right.
Which is amazing, because I've done my own Kickstarter for comic book animation years ago, and it is a full-time job. And even after you're done, you're busy mailing stuff for months afterwards. So Zoop does all that stuff for you. They send out the mails. They help you with the getting the word out about it and stuff. So you got some cool rewards for basically donating. But the one that I really sucks out, because you actually have a writing class if you donate, because you mentioned about working on Cartoon Network's Ben 10 and Max Steel. That's really exciting. So can you give us a little more detail about that? Is it just like a one-time Zoom thing, or?
Well, I've taught actually about writing at different points in my career, and I've taught for UCLA Extension, and I've taught for Scriptwriters Network, and also at WonderCon and Comic-Con a few times. And it was something that it's something that I enjoy doing. It's a nice way to give back, and also I love just talking theory and talking shop talk and so on. So the class is pretty much like you'll get a good discount on what I would normally offer through programs like that. And we're going to be it's something I wanted to leave a bit open, where once people like sign up, and then I find out like kind of what their interests are, because I have worked in different media, and so sometimes you may have someone who's interested in what to writing for animation or writing for comics, and
exactly. Different style writing,
they're related fields, but there's definitely pretty significant differences there. Or sometimes I even found that I've taught just kind of general creative writing classes, like maybe you don't know which specific medium you want to work in, but you do want to know about coming up with ideas and how to get more in touch with your creative side. So it's something that I'm leaving open for now. And then I think when those who sign up, I'll reach out and we'll talk a bit about, well, what are you interested in, and try to like shape the class that way. It's a little more customized than it would be if I were doing it through those programs I mentioned.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's cool. I think it's very unique. I had never really seen that really in a campaign before. So I think that's awesome. When does the campaign officially end? All right. It's already doing pretty well already. It's only been a couple of days.
Well, geez, I'm always bad with dates. Numbers.
I don't know when someone will be watching this. That's why I bring that up. So
I I think it's about 3 weeks from now, but I'm not sure when this is going to air.
Okay.
So it's
So
something that
probably at the end of the August, right? Or
yeah, around the end of August.
okay.
I guess this is exactly why I got involved with Zoop, was because
Yeah,
they can
exactly.
they keep track of all those particulars. I kind of joked about it that I kind of had a whole redefinition of fulfillment after I started looking into services like that. I thought that was something like in self-help seminars where I'm learning to find my smile, and then I find out that like, oh, fulfillment means a completely different thing, where campaigns included and you're trying to actually fulfill all the orders that people sent in.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So that's what's really
Yeah.
cool about them is that they'll handle that stuff. It's like they'll handle campaign management and fulfillment and finding the printer and so on. So as I like to phrase it, I get to focus on what I'm good at, which is hopefully telling a really good story, and they get to
Oh,
focus on what they're
absolutely.
good at.
Speaking of really good story, I saw in your press release for this that you had a breathtaking loss to a future UFC fighter at a jiu-jitsu tournament.
Oh yeah.
I got to know the backstory of that,
Well, when I was in college, I was in Boston, and I was training in MMA. And there was a gym that was, and I'll just stress too, it was a hobby. It wasn't something that I really went that far with, but there was a gym that was nearby the school that we could train at occasionally called Y Crew, and their star, I guess, star fighter was this guy named John Doomsday Howard.
Whoa, what's a name?
Yeah, well, what I kind of loved about it was he was specifically named after the monster that killed Superman. That was what he picked as his stage name or ring name. So they had it was a tournament that they had. It wasn't like especially like a formal tournament, but I did get into the finals against him in jiu-jitsu, and it was I mean, I'll never forget the experience of just like grappling with somebody just being toyed with. It felt like just like a mouse against a cat, because his precision was just so laser focused that if you were like grappling with him and if your elbow like landed here versus here, then he was able to cinch it in. What was also really crazy to me about watching it was we'd have this tournament, you get done with a match, and you roll on the side of the mat and just be exhausted and, gasping for breath. He was training in between his matches.
Oh, wow.
So he's doing the dog sled, he's doing chin-ups, he's doing all this sort of stuff. And like the match was sort of his break. Like that was how he relaxed. Yeah. And
wow.
I've never seen it ever done in real life, but he was like trying out moves on people, and he tried like a flying arm bar on this one guy. And then when I got to him in the finals, like he choked me with my own arm. It was just like, like this, like.
Have you ever used that in like one of your comics or something, like the villain?
One of these days, I kind of want to get to it.
That'd be a fun Easter egg.
The thing that's like funny about like Brazilian jiu-jitsu is it's not the most like cinematic martial art. Like there's not a lot of like flat. It's very like kind of technical, and like some of the poses will definitely look very goofy as opposed to say like Muay Thai, which is very flashy, or Taekwondo with like high kicks or what have you.
Yeah.
The thing that was crazy to me about it though too was that he went on to fight in UFC, and then he wasn't even, he had an okay career I think as it went along, but it was one of those cases again where I just remember going against it, where it was just like you're dealing with somebody at such a higher level of athleticism and skill that it was very clear that he was just toying with me and everybody else in that tournament.
That's so cool. Well, everyone, you can support the campaign now. Zoop.gg. You can go on there. You can also check out other ones they got going on. And before I let you go, are you on social media so we can follow your journey going forward by any chance?
Yes, I'm on Twitter, which is just at Tom Pinchuk. So it's TOMPINCHUK. I don't actually post a lot on there. Lately, what I've been doing, I started a newsletter, which is called the Chuck Chronicles. And it's something that I've come to like, just because it lets me get into deeper detail with what's going on in my career and my projects, and I can offer.
Gotcha.
I have a hard time breaking things down in the sound bites the way Twitter kind of needs you to do that. But I have an email on there that I've also been doing the letter column. So it's a fan mail column that if anybody has questions about my projects or about writing in general. I
Okay.
tried to like make it fairly in depth.
Is
So it's
there a
like,
website to sign up for this, or do you just gotta like send you a message on Twitter or something?
I'm linking it on my Twitter. It's honestly, if you just look up the Chuck Chronicles, it's just that Chuck is spelled CHUK, not CHUCK.
Gotcha.
So that'll be fairly easy to find. And then like I said, I'm open to like that. That's a better place I like to have for fan mail, because I just love that old feel of the letter column. Every so often.
Oh yeah.
Like really giving
I've been wanting to start a newsletter for Bionic Buzz for a long time. I just haven't got around to doing it yet.
I know there's only so many hours in the day,
exactly,
right?
So.
But I like it because again, it lets me get into deeper detail about the stuff, which it was even like a
and like you said, it's Twitter. It's got to be like the little soundbite. That's it. So, well, cool, man. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me, and let's talk down the road or future projects. All right.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've got stuff in the pipeline. I can't wait to talk about it. But everybody check out Remember Andy Xenon for now, and please enjoy.
Yes. All right, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.